Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Rachel Naa-Du, Laryea, and I'm the author of Black Capitalists. I had the privilege to attend the Black Capitalist dinner and discussion this evening, and a convening of the minds for people to think about action collectively around Black economic empowerment, ownership, and really building a new kind of economic future where everyone gets to thrive. And so I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have been here tonight.
I joined this company where you can be an entrepreneur, one of the partners, Van Lieshout & Partners, and they look at quality. And that's also important for you, and again, for my children, because I had to face a lot of problems during my career. And what I said, I don't want this for my children. I don't want this for my neighbors, for your children. You know, I have to be there, just to give them the chance, so we are there, we are also good. When I attended an investment meeting in a room, it was all white. I feel like this today again because I'm not black and I'm not Afro-American, but you know, you feel different and people look at you. So I didn't want to attend those meetings anymore. So my friend said, you know, Faisal, you have to go. Because if you don't go, they won't see you. And they don't know that you could be a banker, that also we, as not white person, are good enough to be there. So that gives me the motivation to go there and sit in front in every meeting and ask a question just to let them know, and even this, because they're not stupid questions, but just to show them, hey, we're here and we're not going. You know, so that's my drive, one of my drives, my children. The gratitude I got was more worth than money to me, and that's what I hope to create tonight. Don't only think about capitalism, but also think about giving back to your community. Be social. It comes hand in hand, because of that, it also gave me the opportunity to be there, to be accepted, and say, oh, you're also doing that and that. So the CEO, of course, was proud. You know, he said, yeah, this is my man, and we are a diverse company here. We have one of them. You have one of them. Yes, that's true. But you know, and you also thought, use the system, use what you have. We should start at the bottom, also to our children, to say them, don't be afraid, we are there. Don't say, oh, because I'm black, I'm not allowed to do that. No, don't take that card. Say, I'm here, I'm good. So I hope we have tonight a good discussion, and I'm looking forward to hear more about the book.
We have to create together, we have to collaborate, to create more freedom and influence to get to the capital. So where did it come from? And I want to mention these guys' names because at the end I'm an activist. Marcus Garvey wrote about this. Booker T. Washington wrote about this, and Malcolm X wrote about this. So this is old. This is something we should know. And now we're here in the 21st century, still suffering because the systems were set up like that. And even if you would say, yeah, come and work with us, I know while working for ministries and blah, 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 if you're a black person and you have to compete with a white person, you will be second. This is the facts and the figures. I'm not going to ask you if you agree. But these are the facts. And it's even worldwide. If Africans want to do business with the US or Europe, you need, I mean, very specific licenses to get in, while Europeans can get everywhere. Today I heard that 94% of South Africa, the land of South Africa, is owned by white South Africans. Did you know? What I know from Curacao is from in the field that I'm active in, that the black people from Curacao have only access to 30% of the land, and 50% of the people are under the social norm. So an African saying, alone you go faster, but together you go further. Okay? And another one is, when you've reached the top by elevator, don't forget to send it back because there are always people waiting to get in.
I was always someone who was curious about lived experiences. And it was the case, my mom and dad were both born and raised in Ghana. And in the 80s, my mom migrated to the US really in search of that American dream, more opportunities. And through the help of an affordable housing program and a lottery system, she bought her first home in what was then one of the most affluent counties in Northern Virginia, where I grew up. And every instance of wealth that I saw was always associated with whiteness. And so I didn't have a model or a picture for what it looked like to be both black and wealthy. And so even as a child, I had these questions of what does that look like? What does black wealth look like? Because my own family experience was very different than what I was seeing in my immediate community. And so those were some of the questions of how is black wealth achieved? What are the sacrifices or the trade-offs to achieving it? And so from a young age, I was always curious about race, identity, and what it meant to be in spaces, but never feel as though I had the authority in them. And what would need to happen in order for me to feel as though I had the authority in those spaces. And so those were the questions that really inspired my trajectory over time. And yeah, I got those, degrees and the different professional experiences, but it's all been focused on how do we create a condition of possibility focused on black thriving globally. And so that was really the genesis.
Black driving. Can you say more about black driving?
Black thriving is really a way to resist, and some of the speakers kind of spoke to it, a kind of intergenerational historical legacy, really centered on struggle, centered on racism, exploitation, extraction. Even when you talk about blackness and capitalism, sometimes people will tell me when they read the title of the book, they'll have a visceral reaction. And what they're responding to is the reality that it is very difficult to adopt an economic system vis-a-vis capitalism when you consider the history of it, especially in American or Western context. How is it that black people were the bedrock and the foundation of the system, and yet we were never able to be the greatest beneficiaries of that system through the transatlantic slave trade and through legalized slavery? And so for me, it's really thinking about how can we subvert, how can we have strategy and intention in using the tools of capitalism to create new outputs and new outcomes. So when you ask about black thriving, it's really about how to create a new reality for how we engage in the economic system that we're in. Because we know capitalism, it produces what we said, exploitation, extraction, and violence. And we are often the ones who are victim to that output. But the question and the opportunity is how do we use the tools in service of us to create a better position of power and sustainability for our communities. And so that is really the focus and the intention when we talk about, or when I even talk about black thriving. I think it's really important to make sure that we have a common ground of definitions. So when we even talk about what capitalism is...
That was my question.
That was your question?
That was my question. No, that was my question.
But I'm curious from the group, from all of you, how would you define capitalism? Because I think it's really important for us to collectively know what we're talking about or saying when we're talking about this economic framework.
Oh, so difficult. If I can speak in English, in Portuguese, okay?
You can translate for us. You can translate for us.
Oh, but I read in school. But for us, in my age, capitalism is exploitation.
Exploitation. Okay.
Exploitation.
Excellency, what is your definition of capitalism?
I don't have any definition, but I believe in what a few speakers have said earlier, they talked about resilience, they talk about how to navigate in the system in order to create wealth. So to me, those two things are very, very important.
Look at the definition, and somebody already gave it, about the exploitation, but you can also reverse it. So, because we also talk about social capitalism, and when you talk about social capitalism, you talk about it in a good way. You talk about spreading knowledge. You talk about building wealth together, community building. So I don't want to talk about capitalism. I want to talk about social capitalism, where economics, you have to have economics, but also how can you return and invest in a community.
I actually agree with Her Excellency. It doesn't have to have a negative connotation. We can spin it and make it positive. Black empowerment, black economic empowerment, blacks coming together, building communities, becoming wealthy. It doesn't have to be exploitation. So I totally agree with what she has said. Let's make it positive.
You can speak about capitalism. I want to go way back. You have everything under the ground, minerals, everything. I'm a white man. I come to Africa. I see that they have everything, but they cannot utilize it. I have machines. I come down there. I signed an agreement with you 400 years ago. My great 1,000 back years, 400 years ago, they didn't do anything. I bring them mirror, I bring them whiskey, I bring them gunpowder. I tell them, okay, I'm going to take everything away from you and send it back to my country. And after I have done everything with it, I bring it back to you and I sell it to you. But you have no money. So I'm going to borrow you money to buy it from me. Recently, the Ghanaian president, Mahama, he said, we sell our cocoa to the Europeans, but we don't have money to buy it from the farmers. So we have to collateral our cocoa. So the white man will give you money to buy the cocoa. So when you buy the cocoa, you send it to the person who gave you money. So you have industry in your country, cocoa industry, but because you have already sold your cocoa to the white people, you cannot access the cocoa to your industry. That's capitalism. The white man has everything. He comes to you because you are poor. And when you are poor, he tells you, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to finance your education. I'm going to finance your health care. I'm going to build your roads, but I will give you loan, and you have to contract a European company to lay your roads. So it is always the same old thing. They have everything, they come to you, they exploit your cocoa. You don't know how to make chocolate. In Ghana, where I was born, they don't even know what chocolate is. When you buy chocolate, it's 30% cocoa, 30% cocoa. But in Netherlands, in Switzerland, they have 80% cocoa in their chocolate. That's capitalism. Can I go to?
You're in Africa. Africa, we don't have pressure.
No pressure at all. No, thanks. No, I mean, you can debate about this for so long. I mean, I remember also the debates about whether Heineken is doing good things in Congo or not, whether they should leave Rwanda when a regime comes into power, which is not good at all. But in the end of the day, I do believe that those companies do play a role and that they need to be there. And at the end of the day, you're better off with private sector globally than without. Investor confidence, stuff like that. That is important. So definitely, capitalism in itself, it can have good things, but it needs to be driven in the correct way. I mean, there's not, in Dutch we would say roofkapitalisme. Predatory capitalism, of course, that's the wrong thing, but business can really transform economies, can transform countries, and I do believe in that. So let's look at it from the positive way, and I hope the people who do business do that in the proper way.
Why is it, so I mean that we still like knocking on the door with the west or the northern part, knocking on the door, trying to find a seat at the table when we are not even at the same table as 54 Africans on one continent. So geographically, we are not even one voice. We're not one voice. So let's say from Ivory Coast, let's say in December, I went to the African Cup of Nations in Morocco. I left from Amsterdam to Morocco. It was cheaper than my sister who lives in Senegal, who had to go, she had to stop in Casablanca, and from Casablanca she had to go to Marrakesh. And that was more expensive. Yes, the distance is longer, but there's not Air Senegal who can take it there. And she gets there, she has to show a Dutch passport to come in without a visa. Well, there's no Dutch team playing in African Cup of Nations. Why?
It's a very interesting perspective.
So you have to have an inequality in order to have someone who is really rich. You have to have someone who's really poor to have that balance. Capitalism doesn't work in an equal way.
Saying to hear the range of definitions from exploitation to kind of a neutrality even in terms of how we're talking about, or even social capitalism. I would invite us to consider the definition of capitalism to be, for the purposes of this conversation, an economic system whereby private actors, you, me, engage with the intention to own the means of production, with the intention to derive excess monetary capital. Okay? Do we take issue with that definition?
Yeah, can we agree to that? Sorry?
Okay, that's a basic definition, exactly. But what's interesting is that definition is inherently race neutral. It is the case that capitalism has been racialized. When we look at the history of the exploitation and extraction and the violence, and how difference, namely race, has become a major way to exploit people. And so when you consider that, and what some of the comments were around, oh, let's focus on social capitalism, or how we can use it as a way to use the tools to build economic empowerment, that becomes the opportunity. And how I talk about it in the book is Black capitalism reframed. It's about using capitalism as a tool, recognizing that the tools are inherently race neutral, but it is up to us to decide, are the outputs going to be exploitative, or are they going to be in service of community? Are they going to be in service of Black thriving? You know, cooperative economics in that sense. And so that becomes the deviation from the capitalism that we exist in today. And I want to get back to the question Astrid raised around, are we talking about wealth, or are we talking about capitalism? And surely we can have a holistic definition of wealth that exceeds just any kind of monetary benchmark. Because you can think of wealth holistically, about mental, spiritual, communal wealth, right? But we also know that we live in the economic system that we're in today. And so monetary capital is a big part of that when you also talk about intergenerational wealth. And I think it's so important to acknowledge the fact that globally, you know, the conversation is around wealth building. But it's important to acknowledge that when you're talking about monetary wealth building, that is within the context of capitalism. And so we cannot get away from that. And so that is what inspires us, I think, to really think about, okay, how do we build a tactical repertoire for the strategies and the tools to exist in this moment, knowing that we're trying to create something new. And so that is really, I would say, the opportunity and the invitation for how we can think about capitalism while always trying to deviate from what we know of it to be and what it has been in order to inspire us to create something new in the long term.
I am Brian Cedar. I come from Blackstone Investments. So if someone knows about capitalism, it's me. If you have been the product of the capitalism system, and people have built off of your back, have built their own societies, have built their own wealth, at this point, we as blacks, it's impossible for us to overcome the difference in how we build capitalism. So we are going to have to create something that is specific in the current economy, where we can be a niche party, but this system is basically against, capitalism is against black people. That's what I personally believe. Because if you look at what's happening in Africa, happening in Amsterdam, at the end of the day, we become a victim of the capitalism, because it is the way that white people think about capitalism, how they put it in the market, and the way that they put it in is 9 out of 10 times against our interest.
An hour ago, this gentleman said capitalism started from Africa, and now we are.
I totally disagree with that.
And that's so interesting today. And we are not here to agree on everything. That's fine.
As you said, capitalism doesn't have any racial thing in it.
How?
No, there is not.
I don't know. I really want to be precise with words here, because they matter. It is, and I completely agree, when you're talking about racial capitalism, we know that the bedrock of capitalism today would not exist without legalized slavery. We know that. But what I am saying is that if we agreed on that definition of capitalism that I offered before, private actors pursuing ownership of the means of production with the intention to create excess capital, that is not to say that the only private actors are white people. Anybody can be a private actor, okay? And so when I say that the tools of capitalism have been racialized, it accounts for the genesis of Western capitalism. But it does not account for what you're suggesting, Frazel, in terms of preceding histories where you see market activity. That is not a white phenomenon, okay? And so I invite you to kind of speak.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's also about ownership. We have to take ownership. We don't have to say, yeah, okay, it's a racial thing. No, we take ownership of our own capitalism. And you can give an example to us, to others, and build it. Take your responsibility. That's what I'm trying to say. And in that responsibility, trust each other. And if you only say it's because of slavery, if I go 10,000 years ago back, there was no slavery. There's always been slavery. Even our black people traded in slavery. Why there's slavery? Not because of the white man came. Because the black people, the tribes, I spoke to the guide over there, he's on his telephone. There is a lot of, within Africa, also a lot of, fighting and not granting each other things. So, no, I don't know things. I don't know if it's capitalism. For me, in my branch, capitalism is money. And money is the oil to the machine.
I've just jotted some little comment here that black capitalism sees taking part in the market as a way to gain power, but it often ignores how the system itself can keep racial inequality in place. It also overlooks differences within black communities such as tribes, beliefs, traditions, and class. Because of this, it is not clear if simply being included in the market can solve deeper problems, or what really makes something black beyond identity. These internal differences can weaken trust, make it harder to work together, and limit shared progress. As a result, efforts may become divided, benefit only a few people, and lead to unequal outcomes instead of real collective empowerment. I see a lot of Africans, because some of us, we claim we are Pan-Africanists, but we are not, we are finding it extremely difficult to unite. because of what I've just mentioned. So my question now comes: what political, social, and economic transformations are necessary before black capitalism can meaningfully include the majority of black community?
The part of the question that we all have to collectively answer is, what kind of shared future is blackness going to connect us to? And we have to decide what that is. I would argue it is black thriving. It is not just a history of struggle and resilience that we should celebrate and have pride in, but also what is that future? You know, because we have to continue to progress. And so that is where there's an invitation to not let those differences become so great that they rupture the very thing that's holding us together, but in fact become just another point of celebration of, okay, you might be, you know, from the Caribbean, or I'm from West Africa, whatever it is, we still have a shared experience. And I was just talking to Naomi about this, is that what's been so insightful for me in being here is that, you know, I've been all around the US, I've been in West Africa, the conversation is the same. It's exactly the same, no matter where we find ourselves geographically. And also what's really compelling is the fact that, you know, we can talk about politics, but it still doesn't hold a candle to the fact that the black experience, it's not just a racial identity, but it's also a social status. It's a social identity. Because no matter where you find black people around the world, socially, we continue to remain at the lowest rung of the ladder, economically as well. And so that should be enough of a reason, a compelling one, to recognize that we need to have a shared objective and a goal, especially in light of all of those kind of divisions that you name. And so I think that's really the opportunity. And I also want to just speak to black capitalism, because the term itself is not new. It was certainly, I would say, popularized during the Nixon era in the US, when after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., there were questions around how do we advance or catalyze economic activity within the black community. And black capitalism became a campaign of sorts, but what was missing, fundamentally missing in that strategy, was that it only accounted for black elites. It did not account for the full vertical around class stratification whatsoever. Whereas my definition really accounts for how can private actors engage in the economic system and reposition themselves within it, both mentally and also in their behaviors, with the end goal of communal thriving. And you see that's a main deviation from capitalism. Yeah.
I understand all the explanations you give, but the foundations, the ground has to be prepared and be ready for black capitalism to really achieve its collective purpose. Because without the proper foundation, it's still going to fragment in time. So this is my critique of the approach.
One of the things that I'm also doing, which I have 50% of the shares in, is a ferry company in on Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. We're currently setting this up with the 3 governments there. The biggest challenge was aligning those 3 islands. So people who look like us, right? Who had difficulty understanding, oh, okay, there are black people coming to the islands with this level of idea, and what is the purpose? The purpose is economic interconnectedness, making sure that people can jump on a ferry from Curacao, go to Aruba or Bonaire. We do cargo, we do people 4 times a day, or 6 times a day, sorry. But what the more important point is, I said to the government, it's not only about that I need to be the shareholder. What I want to do is make sure that there's trickle-down effect. So what I decided to do is build a model whereby, for example, a taxi driver in Curacao gets 2 people from a ferry or from a cruise ship. They arrive in Curacao, they want to go to Bonaire. The taxi driver is driving and say, hey, do you guys want to go to Bonaire? Yeah, we can go to Bonaire. How do we get a ticket? That taxi driver can go essentially with his own signal on our website, log in, book the 2 tickets, and get essentially sort of a kickback or referral fee, which means that now a taxi driver is looking at the company, the ferry company, as himself, as his identity, right? So, and that is what we call a decolonized business model, right? So when you talk about black capitalism, most people want to get to the precipice. They want to get to the first million, the second million. I've done all that. Now you need to be more solidary with people around you, right? Making sure that people who are standing on the block still come up. That's the point here. Not only, oh, I have my car and I have my house and I like, great. Make sure you make good decisions about family. Make sure you educate your children. Marry the right woman. Right? Do all of those things to get to. Make sure you get there and then give back. And I think that's what the focus that we're still not having is how do we look back and understand how trickle down effect then works, right? So put your money where your mouth is. I think that's the first thing you should be doing.
The value that we express externally as well, but it starts internally. And we can talk about all many of divisions that don't allow for us to think in the manner that you're even suggesting, how you build an ecosystem of community. You're not just thinking about yourself, because again, that is a deviation from capitalism today. It's around how can you hoard resources for your own individual kind of benefit, whereas Black capitalism in the frame that requires that communal mindset is how can I build an ecosystem where we collectively thrive. And so that really is the fertile ground that we can build upon when you're talking about Black capitalism, or at least how I would argue for it. The notion of Sankofa, which is what was kind of mentioned before, to go back and get it. We talk about how instances of capitalist production, market transactions, this is not something that's just specific or unique to the West. We have to go back in time to really understand how we've always traded related to each other. But what has been different, especially when you look at African instances of market activity, it has a communal orientation. It does not have an individual community orientation. It's really about how can we collectively steward the resources that we have and ensure and protect that the community first and foremost is taken care of. And so when you talk about Ubuntu, it's always thinking about what are the cooperative economics that are required in order for everybody to thrive. And so that is part and parcel to this notion of Black capitalism.
I met a lot of Black people, Black descendants, but they don't go out to vote. And I calculated it. If 1/3 of the people with Surinamese roots would go out to vote, then we would have 11 seats in parliament. But we don't know our power. And in Atlanta, I know Stacey Abrams. She was the first Black woman who really started to empower Black people to get out and vote. And that's why Atlanta now is thriving, has a good Black economy, has Black politicians who also make policies to help the community go further. So my question is, in this whole perspective about Black capitalism, like, how do you see it in from a political point of view?
Can I react on what you said? Today I should not have an opinion, but I think I have an opinion into what you said. You see, I think and I feel that most Black people or Arabs or Jews, whatever, non-white, let me say non-white, we don't own this country. That's why we don't vote. I own this country. At the age of 18, every 4 years, every 2 years, I vote. Because I own this country. I live here. I pay tax. My kids are here. And you don't go anywhere, my kids. My grandchildren will not go anywhere. So I have to vote. And I was also on the list last week in my village. I'm part of a political, I'm a member of a political party. We have to own this country. So you have to vote. And if you don't vote, please. Who does to vote? He's not allowed to talk today.
We can't expect them all to think like we do. I must admit, I don't have any financial problems. I have a good, wealthy life. But I'm also aware that a lot of people, a lot of Black people, don't have the same privilege as I have. So we can't expect them to think or act the same way we do. I can't stand up and go and vote because I know what I'm voting for. But if I'm in survival mode, You can't ask that from me. And I think we're missing that part. We need to get people intrinsically motivated to improve their own lives. It starts with them individually. And after that, if you know who you are, if you know your own identity, then you can't push yourself into, let's say, a victim mode or whatever, then you will want to thrive. And I think we're missing that part. We really need to look into that.
Great one. Thank you. Very important. Thank you. And how do you manage your day? If you have the, let me say, the wrong attitude, and it's not to me, if you have to be in the office at 8:30, you'll be there at 8:25, not 8:35. That is attitude. So I think when we as black people, not even as black people, as human beings, have the right attitude in the things we do, the things we believe in, we can achieve much more than we are doing today. And I'm not saying I have always the right attitude. I'm not saying that. No, you are saying no. But I think it's it starts with your with you, and of course so many things can happen in along the way.
We all have different positions that we occupy within capitalism. Some of us in this room are entrepreneurs. Some of us are corporate professionals. We are all consumers. We all open our wallet every day, multiple times a day, to transact, right? And so when you ask the question of what can we do tonight, starting, not even tomorrow, when we think about the seat that we occupy, entrepreneur, whatever it is, the question can be, how can my set of decisions gesture towards Black thriving beyond myself? And so when it comes to consumerism, how am I spending, sharing my wallet share with institutions and organizations, and am I doing it in a way that's incentivizing Black thriving for more than just me? That's something we can all decide and take action on today. When we think about the entrepreneurial status, right? If we know that capitalism is exploitative, we know if you are the business owner and you're thinking about the economics of your business and you're trying to be profitable because you're in business to be profitable, but you also appreciate that people are intrinsically valuable, so you're not going to repeat the exercise of exploiting them in order to reap excess profit, how do you build a culture within your business that values people first and foremost and profit flows from that afterwards? If you're in corporate, the question is, okay, many of us have the experience of being the one and only in the room. How do you create opportunities for others outside of the space, the corporate space, to also enter? Because oftentimes, I hear it all the time in corporate, there isn't a pipeline for quote unquote diverse talent. We know that's not true. So how do we, in the seat that we occupy in those spaces, create, opportunities for other people as well to join us in that space? I'll give you one example that's been a powerful example for me. So at JP Morgan Chase, we have collected and created a kind of informal group called the African Alliance. And what that does is on a monthly basis, hundreds of us from across JP Morgan Chase, we all work at different kind of offices across the nation, but also across the globe. We come together on a Zoom call once a month and we're sharing resources. Hey, did you see this opportunity or this opportunity? Let me refer you for this job internally. Let me show you, let me give you the blueprint of how you be successful in this role. Those are the kinds of things we can be doing in corporate spaces, again, to create more instances of Black thriving for us collectively. So those are just some examples of action we can all take, right, today that's going to get us towards a greater future.
We need only one takeaway from this book.
Yeah, I'd say the takeaway or the call to action is just that, action. We have been talking, and it was mentioned, we've been talking about this conversation for years and years. It's nothing new. Someone spoke to, I think it was Astrid, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, right? We have a long enduring history of how we think about collective economics. It's important that whatever our own economic identities, we want to debate about capitalism or socialism, whatever it is, in the here and now, we know what the situation is. We also know what it's going to take, what are the set of solutions to get us to more instances of Black thriving. So what is the action, the shared objectives that are going to get us there? That's I would offer as the call to action to really not get caught up in the semantics, but really in the action that's going to create a future that we can all be more proud of. You know, we talked a lot about intergenerational legacy, what we're leaving behind for the future generation. None of that is going to materialize until action is really first and foremost. So that's the real call to action.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
It's a movement, and the movement, and we all have to, own that movement, and we have to participate in that movement. And I think today, for both of us, it's a start. Actually, we started yesterday. We are going to Brussels tomorrow, another event. From Brussels, we go to Paris on Wednesday. Then we drive all the way to London, another event. And we come back to home to Amsterdam. So we are on the way to something, to me, something greater than, bigger than just a book. That's the movement.
So for any of you who feel as though the conversation that we've had in this room, if there are communities within your own networks and communities that would benefit from hearing this, please connect, let's do it, let's galvanize that action that I spoke to. And so that's my ask of all of you for this evening as well.
I think the door's locked, right? Okay, it's locked. Locked. Because before we go, everyone should get a copy. I'm happy to join you this week to Brussels, Paris, and London. And I'm happy to be your business partner. And also, I hope we're going to meet many of you this August and join us to the United States. Because I think there's going to be a big opportunity for all of us to learn, educate ourselves, and to build capital, ownership, and economic power. And wealth. Can I have one big warm applause for Laryea?
My name is Jelle Beemster de Boer. I'm Deputy Minister for the province of North Holland. And I was here at the Black Capitalist movement because one of my best friends from college is hosting this. And I really liked the atmosphere of community building that that people were talking about here. And I think it's really important that communities help each other out for business and entrepreneurial causes, but also for like the labor market. So I think this is an interesting insight for me into this community.
Hello, my name is Anushka Biekman and I'm a member of parliament for Democrats 66, the biggest party in parliament right now and the party who delivers the prime minister. I'm here at the Black Capitalist event with the author Rachel, and I'm so glad to be here because we heard a lot of useful insights of how we can build communities and how we can use economical power to benefit our communities. I want to add something as well, and that is also the political power of the communities within Europe, the black communities, especially also in the Netherlands. Make sure you always get out to vote and that your voice is being heard. Support your local politicians and make yourself to be seen so that policies also can benefit you.
Hello everybody, my name is Victoria. I come from Nairobi, Kenya. Today I'm here in Amsterdam. We have been meeting the author of this wonderful book. Very many perspectives about black capitalists. What is black capitalist to you? What does it mean? What does it trigger? And especially for me as a black woman, I believe in black empowerment. And this is a book that every woman should get, every black woman should get. It is about us working together as black people, building our own wealth and passing it on to generations. And my takeaway from this book is that you must know your worth as a woman and as a black person in today's world. Thank you.